Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Looking to Bitcoin, and today we're going to be looking at whether you should be focusing on Bitcoin itself or Bitcoin related stocks. To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the Bitcoin price live chart here on lookintobitcoin.com, where you can see a number of Bitcoin related metrics and general data that is usually quite useful for your investing and analysis. But if we scroll down a little bit here, we can see Bitcoin versus some more traditional US indexes such as the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, and then a couple stocks in Tesla and Apple. Now we can see there is a lot of correlation here, usually as one's moving up, the rest aren't too far behind, and vice versa on the downside. But we can see over the past year, Bitcoin has actually outperformed all of these comparisons. Obviously, this changes a little bit on each different time frame that you look at, but in a general trend, Bitcoin's a fairly good performing asset. But there are actually a number of stocks that are almost directly correlated and related to Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets, which may give us a little bit of a better indication of Bitcoin's potential underperformance or outperformance of stocks. Because when we can look at ones that are directly related to Bitcoin, it may give us a bit more insight into Bitcoin's potential upcoming performance. So what I've loaded up here is just on TradingView, Coinbase, which is one of the biggest exchanges in the crypto space. Again, not directly focused on Bitcoin as it supports a number of different cryptocurrencies, but nevertheless, it is a very relevant baseline for our comparisons today. We also have MicroStrategy. Again, this isn't necessarily a Bitcoin entirely focused company. This is a software company. It's just that they hold a vast majority of their treasury reserves in Bitcoin, so their stock price is again quite correlated and tied to the performance of Bitcoin. And then Riot down here, which is a mining company. So these focus on mining Bitcoin to try and increase their holdings of BTC directly by securing the network. So we can see here over the past few days and weeks, these have all been on a very healthy uptrend. And of course, Bitcoin over the past few weeks as well hasn't done too bad either. But what we can actually do is look at comparison to see the over or underperformance of these assets when comparing them to Bitcoin. So here I've loaded up a combination of these three stocks. The ticker you see here is a little bit wild, but I'll explain the reasoning behind how I've calculated this. What this is looking at is if we were to have invested $1,000 split equally amongst the three Bitcoin related stocks we just discussed, Coinbase, MicroStrategy, and Riot Platforms, at the exact bottom of this most recent cycle. So this would have been in late December. The $1,000 you invested in these would have been the most opportune moment to do so. We can see performance has been pretty good, and that $1,000 initial investment would currently sit at just beneath $3,900. So not too bad at all. And what we can also do is load up Bitcoin here, which I've also done. If you were to have invested at the most opportune moment, which would have been a little bit earlier, you'd have bought 0.065 BTC, and that would be currently sitting at $1,971. So we can actually see a fair bit of underperformance of Bitcoin compared to these Bitcoin and cryptocurrency related stocks. But what we can do is just zoom out a little bit, because obviously these things are cyclical, and if we see at the minute a fair amount of outperformance from these stocks, but if we just zoom back a little bit here, we can actually see from the peak where this would have topped out at around $9,500, not far off $10,000 to the upside. This actually came down this three-way stock combination to, like we said, $1,000. So it lost 90% of its value during this bear market downside move we had. Whereas Bitcoin obviously didn't have the best performance, but it was only reduced from around $4,400 to this $1,000. So quite a massive improvement. I know we're discussing improvement on negative price action, but it is all still relevant. What we can actually do is divide these stocks by Bitcoin to see the actual cyclical real outperformance or underperformance. So here what I've done is just the same ticker we had before, but actually just dividing it by the price of BTC. And we can see over a very sustained period of time, the amount of BTC you could have actually purchased with the equivalent amount in these stocks decreased substantially. We saw a downside move of purchasing power in Bitcoin decrease about 75%. So with that same amount of money, you'd have been able to buy 75% less of BTC, holding that through its downside move in the BTC comparison. And what we can do is load up the Bitcoin chart here and see that while Bitcoin, of course, is mainly correlated to the stock's performance. When we see Bitcoin decrease, we also see these stocks decrease. We can see that the actual purchasing power is actually not 100% correlated. We can see here, even though Bitcoin was decreasing here, these were increasing. So you could have bought more BTC with these stocks or their equivalent, and then as Bitcoin actually moved up, this was decreasing. So it's not always a perfect correlation, whereas as one's decreasing, the other is also decreasing. Like we said, it's very cyclical, but overall, this actual recent outperformance in the grand scheme of things is actually still not great. We can see a lot of people saying that maybe Bitcoin stocks over the next cycle will outperform BTC, which may be the case, but even from the peak we set in 2021, Bitcoin stocks are still performing about 40% worse than actual spot BTC during that time period. I think one of the best comparisons we can actually look to for potential future performance and correlation between Bitcoin and the Bitcoin stocks is to look at gold and the underlying price of gold compared to gold mining stocks. As Bitcoin has some similarities with gold and is often deemed a digital gold, of course with the relation to mining as well, a lot of people investing in commodities and precious metals such as gold and silver will actually look to try and outperform the underlying asset by buying stocks related to the asset, such as gold mining stocks, in hopes of outperformance. And we can see here, this is the gold, silver, and XAU, which is combining a number of precious metal mining stocks. And you can see if we go into a 30-year chart here, gold has actually far outperformed these gold mining stocks. There is, of course, if we go down onto the lower time frames, a lot of correlation still, but especially if we look at something like the 5-year chart, we can see here, as gold moves up, these mining stocks do outperform, but then on the way down where gold's maybe decreasing a little bit in price, we see these gold mining stocks decrease substantially more. And silver's very similar actually, so this is almost like Bitcoin being the gold in this comparison. Silver, which is another crypto altcoin, potentially Ethereum, and then this blue line, which is, again, Bitcoin-related stocks, such as Coinbase, MicroStrategy, Riot platforms. And it is a very similar analogy, I feel, and especially if we go down here, we can see, again, something similar to what we looked at before, the ratio of these gold mining stocks to the actual underlying price of gold. And over the 30-year period, this is on a very much downtrend. So even though we have periods of outperformance and periods of underperformance, on a longer-term basis, this is generally trending to the downside, and I'd imagine Bitcoin stocks will probably face a similar outcome in the coming years. Of course, like we said, right now it seems like over the past few months these Bitcoin stocks doing better has maybe given some people a little bit of FOMO, but if you actually take a step back and look at things from a broader perspective, I think it makes a little bit more sense to just focus on Bitcoin rather than focusing all of your analysis on these Bitcoin stocks. So just to summarize, Bitcoin and crypto-related stocks such as MicroStrategy, Coin, and Riot all have a strong correlation to the underlying price of BTC. And these stocks can be compared to altcoins, like we said, such as Ethereum, which also share a strong correlation to BTC and their overall crypto markets, with a greater degree of volatility and speculation. However, both are likely to outperform sometimes during the bull market, but it's during a bear market when they have this huge underperformance typically, where it really doesn't make much sense to hold these assets long term. Given the increased chances as well that we didn't even discuss previously of company bankruptcy, hacks, or greater costs even investing in these stocks and opening up exchange brokerage platforms here, there, and everywhere, and general underperformance, like we said, in my opinion, it's probably best to stick your focus to the real thing, the underlying thing that everything is correlated and tied to, and that is Bitcoin itself. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live charts, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private trading view scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know in the comments down below and on social media, are you focusing on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency related stocks? If so, which ones? And do you believe in this next cycle we're likely to see a more outperformance from these stocks compared to the underlying price of Bitcoin? Or do you think that over the coming decades it's going to make more sense to hold these Bitcoin and crypto related stocks? As I said, let me know in the comments and on social media. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.